Oh, let's get after it. Unit 8. Solving identities. You guys stunk at this unit. You're horrible. Oh, what do we got to remember? Just a couple things, honestly. But being able to manipulate those couple things. What's one thing you need to remember? In general, you should remember the Pythagorean theorem. Um, for a triangle with hypotenuse 1. Okay, it's your x squared plus your y squared equals 1. Well, we should understand that x is the cosine of theta, uh, that ratio with the hypotenuse of 1. Y is the sine of theta if the hypotenuse is 1. And you get this formula, cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta equals 1. Hooray. That's the first guy we got to remember. From there, manipulations. Divide everything by cosine squared. You get 1 plus. Oh, we remember that sine over cosine is the same as like the y over the x, which is actually the same as tangent. So sine squared over cosine squared is going to be tangent squared. 1 over cosine squared. Well, we remember 1 over cosine is the same as secant, so 1 over cos squared is going to be secant squared. Cool, that's one manipulation. Let's do another manipulation. Divide everything by sine squared. Well, if sine over cosine is tangent, flip it, you get cotangent. Let's divide everything by sine squared. You get cotangent squared plus 1. And then remembering 1 over sine is cosecant. So this is cosecant. Cool. I don't see any double angles in here. So we're going to just pause with that. When we see double angles and the sum and difference formula, we'll break those out. So secant squared minus 1, what is it equal to? You got all these options. Well, I can look at 1 plus tangent squared equals secant squared. Subtract 1 from both sides. I get tangent squared, and that is E. Sine squared minus 1. Okay, ready. Very important. If you got cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1, sine squared minus 1 would have to equal negative cosine squared. How do I do that? I subtract 1. Well, that's going to put 0 on that right side. I'm going to have to subtract the cosine squared. Or other ways to do that. So negative cosine squared is J. Okay, sometimes it's helpful to rewrite, guys, that can be written as sine and cosine as sine and cosine. So I'm going to rewrite this. This is 1 over cosine. And the sines cancel. And I have 1 over cosine theta minus 1 over cosine theta. Turns out that's 0. So 0 is G. Hooray. Hooray. Shut up, Louie. Okay. Cosine squared times 1 plus tangent squared. Y'all are like, oh, we should distribute. You could, but I'm going to see this 1 plus tangent squared and really just use it as secant squared. So I'm going to say this is secant squared. And then I realize secant squared is the same as 1 over cosine squared. And then I realize that cosine squared divided by cosine squared is 1. So the answer is 1. That's C. What if you distributed? Watch. If you distributed, you get cosine squared plus cosine squared times tangent squared. Well, tangent squared is sine squared over cosine squared. and then those cosine squareds will cancel. You end up with cosine squared plus sine squared. Okay, that's 1. Bam. Lots of options. Okay, cotangent times secant, cotangent, and secant I'm going to write as sine and cosine. So I got cosine theta over sine theta. Secant is 1 over cosine theta. So bam, bam, I get cosecant. Yeah. So cosecant B. C. Oh, he's trying to get you here. Everybody's going to think that the top is sine squared plus cosine squared, but you're better than that. That's wrong. Don't think that you can distribute. Don't think you can distribute a square like that. Now, what should I do? Watch this. I am going to distribute the correct way, giving us sine squared theta plus. I'll have a sine cos times a cosine, which will give me 2 sine theta cos theta. And then I also have a cos squared theta. So I do have a sine squared and a cosine squared. I also have a 2 cosine, or sine cos. And then here I have a sine cos. So this plus this, watch, is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. We end up with just 2 sine theta cos theta over sine theta cos theta. Sine theta cos theta is canceled. We get 2. Okay. Cotangent is the same as tangent. Like, man, these are annoying to do, even if you're a teacher. I got tangent squared minus secant squared. You're going to replace secant squared with 1 plus tangent squared. But then you'd be subtracting. You get negative 1. Or you could replace tangent squared with secant squared minus 1. I do that. The secant squareds will go away. And you do get negative 1. Sine and cosecant. 1. See again. Cosecant times secant, or cosine times secant. That's cosine times cosine. Secant is the same as cosine in the numerator, so that's cosine squared. These are just like silly puzzles that if there's one thing you're like struggling with, it'll show up on the free response a little bit. But it's not the most important thing, in my opinion, for mathematics understanding for your future. Like for calculus, this is not super important. Cosines cancel, the sines cancel, you just get 1 minus 1. Let's see. G. Still looking for a sine squared and a negative sine squared. I don't think we get to all of them. Cosecant, secant. This is interesting. This is 1 over cosine theta sine theta. And this is sine theta over cosine theta. All right. 2 things need a common denominator. I'm going to multiply by sine theta. And I get the following. 1 minus sine squared theta. I'm combining the two fractions because they have a common denominator, over cos theta sine theta. And it gives me 1 over cos theta sine theta. It's not necessarily what I want. Wait, no, sorry. 1 minus sine theta. 1 minus sine squared theta is cosine squared theta. Starting to get tired. This will go away with this. I end up with cosine over sine, which is cotangent, and voila, there it is, I, cotangent. Check out this one. Cosine over sine times cosine plus sine. Common denominator here again. Sine theta, sine theta. You get cos squared theta plus sine squared theta over sine because it is a common denominator. I added the numerators together. Cos squared plus sine squared is 1. I have 1 over sine, which is cosecant. That'd be. All right, we're back. There's no more unit 8 problems. It's a shame. Like, I need some solving. Where's like the solving ones? Listen, team, we're missing some like key. Going into calculus, make sure you know the unit circle. There was not that many unit circles. Make sure you know what the graph of sine cosine. You didn't see that many. So like, this is not what I would consider sufficient for unit 8 in these preparations. All right, I'm out.